This is going to be a nutrition video, and this is about my favorite dessert. I think it's the king of all dessert, the best you can have. I'm not saying you're going to get a killer body if you eat this every day. You should not be eating any kind of dessert every day, but this can be made keto, and I think I have succeeded in doing so. And if you get high quality ingredients, this is really a very keto dessert. If you don't put sugar in it, it's all cream. There are no grain products at all. It's just chestnuts, cream, sweetener, vanilla, the usual. So this is what it looks like in a very nice presentation. Angelina was something founded in Pressburg in the Austro-Hungarian kingdom. Eventually it somehow ended up as a French enterprise, and now has offices even New York. In fact, I believe they have several of them, and they have it in the Far East. They have it all over the place, and their centerpiece is the chestnut vermicelli. The French have made something else out of it. They call it the Mont Blanc. They added various parts, which I will get to later. In my opinion, the best one is the original Italian recipe. The oldest version of this recipe was written in Italian in the 16th century, and since then it has been adopted. It's very popular in France, in Switzerland, in Hungary, and Japan for the most part. The starting point has to be the chestnuts. Like, what kind of chestnuts can you get? Fresh ones are the best, no question. But if you cannot get fresh chestnuts, well, I guess the second best would be to get something like this. Something that is not steamed with no water in it. So if you can get roasted, and this is a roasted thing, not terribly expensive, but not that cheap either. So if it's good quality chestnuts and you can't get the fresh one, then you might as well get something like roasted, organic, and so on. An even more user-friendly option is the canned chestnut puree. The best of these are probably the Swiss, but you can only buy 6 in a case. It's really quite expensive, and it does contain sugar, unfortunately. There are the second best would be the French version, and you can get the unsweetened variety, which I think is a good way to go. I'm going to give you links to all of these cans, and as well as the roasted chestnut puree. This is the French way of doing it. You take your canned or whatever chestnut puree and you make these molds. Incredibly intricate, very amazing looking, but the taste is going to underwhelm you compared to the original recipe. And almost invariably they leave the rum out. The rum and the vanilla are absolutely important parts of this recipe. Also, there's very little chestnut. It looks beautiful, but there's a tiny bit of chestnut and a ton of fillers, cheap whipped cream, and so on. Here is a better way of doing it. This is a Japanese take on it. This dessert is very popular in Japan. As usual, the craftsmanship is excellent. There is serious beauty to it. And here he's using a canned version. Unfortunately, the canned version is cooked in water. It should be cooked in cream. So you have to enhance it by adding some butter and cream to it. By adding heavy cream and butter, it becomes more fat, but it's not as good as cooking the chestnuts in cream or a mixture of cream and butter. But it looks beautiful. This Mont Blanc interpretation is the one that appeals to me the best, because it's just beautiful. But again, most of the cake is not the chestnut. It's filled up with the white flour, whipped cream, which is not the way to do it. But as far as visual presentation is concerned, I would say if there is a cuisine that is more brilliantly presentational than the French, it would have to be the Japanese. This is the way I did it, and this is a huge amount. This was probably 2,000 calories in one sitting, and here is what it should look like. This is the original authentic recipe. No white flour, no meringue or anything like that. There is cream at the bottom, and instead of whipped cream, what I do is I mix full fat canned coconut milk or coconut cream that is really a creamy, dense material with Italian mascarpone cream, and I beat it the same way you would beat whipped cream. So you use a beater if you have an electric one, or if you don't, then just by hand, and you really beat it up. It's not going to be as fluffy, but it's a much richer cream. It tastes really good, much better than the average whipped cream in my opinion. And I use a sugar substitute for everything, in vanilla, which I actually make at home. The chestnut in this case was made out of canned chestnut puree, I have to admit. They use these piping bags made out of plastic. I actually prefer to use a potato presser because it's metal touching against the chestnut paste instead of plastic. Not to mention that a lot of this stuff is lost in the plastic and it's very hard to get it out. Whereas it's very easy to scratch it off of metal. I have already been removing most of the chestnut puree. I do not leave a single gram in it. This is probably the best tool for it. A heavy stainless steel potato presser. And I'm giving a link below just in case you're interested. And for the coconut milk, it has to be a fatty coconut milk. And that's what I use for the cream, 50-50, like 1-to-1 ratio. Mascarpone cheese, this is what mascarpone cheese looks like. Most decent grocery shops have it. If your store does not, then maybe you're going to a low-end place. And I prefer to get my coconut milk or cream locally and not off of the internet. I'm going to give you a link below to this page as well, but ideally you should get this locally, and the way to make sure that what's inside is not some watery coconut cream but the real heavy cream is to shake it, and if it feels solid, then you know that what's inside is the real cream and not some low-fat watery stuff. And of course, you want to look at the label and don't get anything low fat. It has to be full fat. And finally, this is the sweetener I have used. I am getting more and more worked up about this thing because xylitol is supposed to not only not make you diabetic, it's not only supposed to be a 0-calorie sweetener, but it also kills a lot of harmful bacteria in the mouth. So it is actually reducing the cavities in your teeth, which is amazing. I mean, this is exactly the sugar we have been looking for. Now, when I started eating it, even small quantities gave me diarrhea, which is not happening anymore. So I'm assuming once you regularly eat little bits, I would say it's best to start with just a small quantity. It's going to change the bacterial culture inside your guts or whatever. So initially, my system just could not process it, but now I have no problem. And the nutrition is excellent. 10 calories per tablespoonful. This is roughly 10% of what you would get from honey or maple syrup. And the total carbohydrate is 4 grams. So this sugar is actually, it's a processed sugar obviously, but it comes from berries and certain woods and shrubs. So it's actually a naturally occurring kind of sugar, but it is derived, so it is synthesized. It is a processed food. It's not as perfect as a natural sweetener like honey, but has much lesser calories to it and far less carbohydrates, which is most important. It also does not harm your teeth. It does not attract negative bacteria. So that's all I wanted to say about this. I'm very glad that I can finally have my favorite dessert and not worry about the consequences. This is it for the current video. If you have any experiences with this dessert or have tried to make it, I would love to hear about your experience. I love it. I have a sweet tooth. I like all kinds of dessert and fruit. But if I had to select the one that is the king of all, I would select this one. And I don't think many people who have tasted the original recipe would disagree. I'm giving you links for everything mentioned in the video, and I'll see you in the next one.